Ave Maria Stella.
Hello, this is post-production Father Matthew Schneider. I don't know what happened. I tried to upload this actually twice, and it didn't work. So now I'm trying it with this little audio addendum at the beginning, and hopefully it works, although it'll be a little out of sync in the list. I hope you enjoy. God bless. Hello, and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legions of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the Star Quest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today, we're on day 220, recovering Apostolic Magisterium 20 on the characteristics of apostolic organizations. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican and frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke about group apostles important and a wide variety of association units the church can be formed to bring this about. Today, we're going to continue chapter 4 on the various forms of apostle, and we're going to talk about how there are lots of good lay apostolates, and they've existed in the past too, but we're going to set out 4 criteria for determining which is good. Usually, I've used A, B, C, D to divide the subparagraphs of a number just as a simplicity, right? But here we have a challenge because it has A, B, C, D for the 4 points. I mentioned this in the summary there, but there's stuff before and after. So I'll just use the A, B, C, D as appears in the text, and I'll say before and after for the other stuff. So before, there's lots of good lay apostolate before the council, often under Catholic action, that term. A and B, lay apostolate has the same mission as the church, and the laity can run such apostolates. C and D, laity should work together and should obey the hierarchy. And then after, we should support organizations with these 4 characteristics. So let's begin with the first part before the letters here, right? And so let's go. Many decades ago, the laity in many nations began to dedicate themselves increasingly to the apostolate. They grouped themselves into various kinds of activities and societies, which, while maintaining a closer union with the hierarchy, pursued and continued to pursue goals which are properly apostolic. Of these associations, or even among similar and older associations, those are specifically noteworthy which followed different methods of operation, yet produced excellent results for Christ's kingdom. These societies were deservedly recommended and promoted by the popes and many bishops, from whom they received the title Catholic Action, in quotations, and were often described as the collaboration of the laity in the apostolate of the hierarchy. New paragraph. Whether these forms of the apostolate have the name Catholic Action or some other title, they exercise an apostolate of great value for our times and consist in the combination's simultaneous possession of the following characteristics. So this number begins by noting there have been prior lay apostolates. They focus on the hierarchy, they produce results, they have different operational methods, they're rightly promoted by popes and bishops. They have this term Catholic Action, which in this number is always in quotation marks as a title. Catholic Action was the main kind of apostolate of the laity before the Second Vatican Council. In various countries, you read the first half of the 20th century, there was Catholic Action in Mexico, in the U.S., and European countries, things like that. But before Vatican II, this Catholic Action was often seen as the extension of the apostolate of the clergy, of the hierarchy, not an apostolate specifically of the laity. But one of the things that Vatican II is really talking about here is we're going to note that every layperson has a duty on their own to apostolate. It's not just kind of an extension of the apostolate of the hierarchy. It is their own apostolate. The term Catholic Action has kind of fallen out of use as a common use. So it will refer back to this later in the number, but I think we shouldn't just get caught up on that name, but the idea of an apostolate supported by the hierarchy. With that structure, I think all of the Catholic charities in the U.S. would fit in what the document here is using is Catholic Action in quotation marks. And many other apostolates that are directly supported have some kind of hierarchy on the board and things like that, but are lay organizations, would fit under what they're saying Catholic Action, even if they don't use that name, because that name is kind of fallen out of use for whatever practical or other reasons. I'm not sure exactly why. And there's new forms arising, and they need characteristics. I'm going to give 4 characteristics, which are A to D here, that we need to have these apostles to be the good ones, to be the ones that the hierarchy should support, etc. So let's read A and B together. Lay apostolate has the same mission as the church, and the laity can run some apostolates. So let's begin. A. The immediate aim of the organizations of this kind is the church's apostolic aim. That is, the evangelization and sanctification of men and the formation of a Christian conscience among them, so they can infuse the spirit of the gospel into various communities and departments of life. B. Cooperating with the hierarchy in their own way, the laity contribute to the benefit of their experience to and assume responsibility for the direction of these organizations, and consideration of the conditions in which the pastoral activity of the church is to be conducted, and the elaboration and execution of a plan of things to be done. So we note here that everything is directed towards the church's mission, towards salvation. Some are more directly obvious salvation. We want to save people, we want to bring them to the gospel. Others are through charity, because you look at how many people were converted by seeing Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa converted hundreds and thousands of people, but she did that through charity. And charity also in itself helps bring people up, helps bring people towards salvation, because if you realize, okay, the church has helped me, I'm being helped, and all these things of charity, you are much more likely to convert. And we need things that sanctify men. We need things that bring the gospel to every nook and cranny. That's really what we're getting in with A here. And B is talking about laity should collaborate with hierarchy, with the hierarchy. Hierarchy just means priests, bishops, the pope, etc. Usually referring more to bishops and above, or maybe certain priests who have certain roles in the diocese, like the vicar general, the number 2 in the diocese. In larger archdioceses, the vicar general is often the auxiliary bishop, but in smaller dioceses, he's a priest. So let's continue here. So the laity should collaborate with the hierarchy. The bishops often see the diocese as a whole. They might see certain needs that an individual layperson in an individual circumstance might not see. So we need that collaboration so the bishop can point out, hey, we need this, and then lay people can respond. And then we also need bishops to have that authority, because bishops can revoke the use of the term Catholic in your name if not following Catholic teaching. They have different levels of how they connect with Catholic organizations. There's always which officially run, like Catholic Charities. Certain dioceses run certain other ones, like catechetical institutes, things like that. They have those that they permit to use the term Catholic, and they have those which they restrict the use of the term Catholic. And several media organizations have been asked to stop using Catholic. Some have not. For example, the National Catholic Reporter has been asked to stop using the word Catholic, but they have I think they've been asked for 50 years or something, but they continue to use it. So let's move on to C and D. Laity should work together and they should obey the hierarchy. Let's read it. C. The laity act together in the manner of an organic body, so that the community of the church is more fittingly symbolized and the apostolate rendered more effective. D. Whether they offer themselves spontaneously or invited to action in direct cooperation with the apostle of the hierarchy, the laity function under the higher direction of the hierarchy itself, and the latter can sanction this cooperation by explicit mandate. So these 2 points are a little different. The first one, C, is talking about how the laity work together. There's an organic whole. They symbolize unity, because we talk about this church. One church. What is one? Unity. And so when we all work together, that provides that example of one. That is that symbolization and that realization of that oneness of the church. Now, obviously, the church is one, even if a bunch of people are working separate, but this more fully and better symbolizes it. Then we have talking about the hierarchy, right? The hierarchy can direct the laity and apostolate. I've mentioned Catholic Charities. The bishops are often some kind of president or something like that. And there might be a board that runs it, but the bishop can appoint who he wants to the board and things like that. So he has that direction. And the bishop also directs the laity and things like the chancery or pastoral center, whatever your diocese uses for where the offices are. There's a few different terms that are used in the U.S., depending on the diocese, and things like that. And when we have that, there is this sanctification. Both sanctify each other. And the laity should obey. We don't just you aren't just called to pray, pay, and obey. But if the bishop says, "Hey, we really need a ministry to help out these people who are starving over in this part of the diocese," laity should try and do that as opposed to doing some other lay apostolate if they're able to. The bishop is hopefully more attuned so to make that obedience. The bishop also has certain things of Catholic teaching, where if a Catholic organization is all of a sudden, giving out contraception to everybody, the bishop can say, no, that's not Catholic, and things like that. And they should obey, and they should pull back and say, okay, we're going to stop doing that. And most bishops aren't going to just say, oh, you're not a Catholic organization right away. They're going to say, hey, please stop doing that, or we might make that step. And they might give them several warnings before they do. But the bishops have that power. So let's read the concluding stuff after D, which can be summarized as we should support organizations with these 4 characteristics. And just a note, I like the idea of something called Catholic action or not. I think really here they're talking about good Catholic apostolates, not necessarily the term Catholic action, even though they use it again. So let's read it. Organizations which, in the opinion of the hierarchy, the ensemble of these characteristics is realized, must be considered to be Catholic action, even though they take on various forms and titles because of the needs of different regions and peoples. New paragraph. The Most Holy Council earnestly recommends these associations which surely answer the needs of the apostolate and of the Church among many peoples and countries, and invites the clergy and laity working in them to develop the above-mentioned characteristics, to an ever greater degree and in cooperation at all times with all other forms of apostolate in a fraternal manner in the Church. So I think those 4 characteristics provide a good model. Here it notes it's ensemble, so it's kind of the combination of the 4. Some might have one of them in perfect degree, another one's in pretty good, or things like that. It's not they have to be all 4 exactly perfect, and things like that, but the ensemble is the whole of these characteristics. And those 4 characteristics do set the bounds of what should be considered a Catholic organization. And we want more lay of apostolate like this. We need tons of initiative. We need tons of people going and doing things like that. So thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help Star Crest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the Star Crest Patreon. Tomorrow we're going to continue the next paragraphs in Apostolicum Axiositatem 2122 on valuing apostolic organizations. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which will provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan. We've also set up an email for questions and comments at Vatican2@sqpn.com, and my own website, frmatthewlc.com, has a contact form. Amen.